Artificial intelligence is pretty much everywhere now, right? It's making huge decisions about our lives. Who gets a job, who gets a loan, you name it. But there's this hidden problem growing inside these incredibly powerful systems. A problem that, well, it kind of reflects the worst parts of our own world. And sometimes it all starts with just a simple, curious question.
So, this was the exact question a hiring manager, we'll call her Anita, found herself asking one day. See, her company had just rolled out a brand new AI system, and this one little sentence, it would end up exposing a massive, multi-million-dollar failure.
Yeah, that one question from Anita, it kicked off this huge investigation into their shiny new system. And the whole thing started with a goal that sounds pretty simple. Just make hiring a little bit easier.
At first, Anita's company was absolutely thrilled. I mean, their new AI was built to find the absolute best candidates by digging through mountains of resumes. On the surface, it looked like a total game changer for efficiency.
But here's where it all went so wrong. The AI was trained on a decade's worth of the company's own hiring data. And in the tech world, that data was, well, it was overwhelmingly male. So the system basically taught itself that male candidates were the ideal, even going so far as to penalize resumes that included the word women's, like in captain of the women's chess club.
And here's the most shocking part. They couldn't fix it. The bias was just baked so deeply into the system that the entire project team was disbanded and the whole thing was shut down. A really powerful and very expensive lesson in just how easily AI can go off the rails. So how does this even happen? How does a system that was designed for pure efficiency become so discriminatory? Well, it wasn't some random glitch. It turns out there's a pretty predictable way that our own biases become these little ghosts in the machine.
Okay, so to be formal for a second, what we're talking about is AI bias. It's when a system's results aren't just wrong, they're wrong in a way that consistently hurts a specific group of people. It basically creates a digital feedback loop for real-world inequality.
The real root of the problem isn't hidden in some super complex line of code. Nope. It all begins right here with the data we decide to feed these algorithms. You can think of an AI model like a student. It's only ever going to be as good or as fair as the textbooks we give it to learn from. And what about those textbooks? Well, they're really just a snapshot of our world, complete with all its historical baggage and flaws. If a society has a long history of discrimination in housing or lending or hiring, guess what? All that is captured in the data, and the AI learns these patterns not as biases to avoid, but as rules to follow. And if you want to see a really jaw-dropping, real-world impact of this, just look at facial recognition technology. A landmark study found these systems worked almost perfectly for white men. But for women with darker skin, the error rate wasn't 1%, it wasn't 5%, it was a staggering 35%. And why? Because the data sets they were trained on were packed with, you guessed it, mostly white, male faces. So you can see the stakes here are incredibly high. On one hand, AI holds this almost unimaginable promise. But on the other, the peril of getting it wrong, well, it can be absolutely catastrophic for any organization. I mean, let's talk about the promise for a second. AI is projected to add nearly $16 trillion to the global economy by 2030. That's one of the biggest economic opportunities of our entire lifetime. It's huge. But the peril is just as big. A biased AI can absolutely destroy a company's reputation. It can lead to massive legal fines. It can cause brilliant, expensive projects to get scrapped entirely. It completely erodes trust with your customers, and it can even cause your own employees to protest, demanding more ethical practices. The risks are very, very real. So, okay, how do we fix this? It's not like you can just issue a simple software patch. The real solution has to happen at two levels at the same time. You've got to work from the ground up with the people who are actually building the tech, and from the top down with the leaders who are steering the entire company. All right, first, let's talk about the ground up fix. The teams building AI have to be diverse. And not just in terms of demographics, but in what they do. You need to bring in social scientists, ethicists. The culture has to empower people to raise their hand and flag problems without fear. And the process itself needs to be standardized, with fairness audits and actual human reviews built in right from the start. Look, building great teams and processes is absolutely critical, but it's not enough on its own. Who holds those teams accountable?
Who's setting the overall direction and making sure the ship is pointed the right way? Well, that brings us to the second level.
This is the top-down fix, and this is where true accountability really lives. The company's board, its leadership, they have to take ownership. They're the ones who need to decide who is ultimately responsible for AI oversight. They have to align the AI strategy with the company's core values, figure out what level of risk they're willing to accept, and make damn sure the right talent is in place to manage it all.
So, with all these fixes in place from the top and from the bottom, what's the actual goal here? What are we really aiming for? It's important to understand that the end game for responsible AI, it might not be what you think it is.
And here's the surprising part. The goal is not to create a perfectly unbiased AI. In fact, most researchers and experts agree that because all our data comes from our own imperfect world, a truly de-biased AI just isn't possible. No, the real goal is much more human than that. It's about building systems and, more importantly, cultures within our organizations. Cultures of responsibility, where it's clear who owns the impact of these tools. Cultures of accountability, for when things inevitably go wrong. And ultimately, it's about building systems that can actually earn our trust.
Because in the end, this isn't really about technology. When we build these systems, we are literally embedding our values into code that is going to shape our future. So the most important question we all have to ask ourselves is this: what values do we want our machines to learn?